Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. This is Darren Walton here from DVW. The other voice you'll hear on the call today will be Sky Yadav. Daniil may pop up if necessary. Okay, let me share my screen and let's kick this thing off. So hopefully you can see my screen now. So this is all about learning to love our SAP data again. I've been working within the SAP business for many years. I know some people love SAP, some people loathe SAP, and some people are indifferent to SAP. I kind of fall more in the love SAP camp, but do recognize that for many of you, that data does seem to be locked away and very inaccessible, particularly in the modern world where we're looking to enable a lot of self-service analytics in particular. So let's learn to love our data again. And I was just reflecting this comment here. You'll have seen this obviously millions of times. If data isn't your oil, given the recent oil price fluctuations, maybe this isn't the best way to start. But let me, I'll go with it anyway, and hopefully I'll make the point before we start talking about the tools. So if data is the new oil, then there can be no doubt that the SAP is the Saudi Arabia of business data. It is an absolute gorilla. Yeah, it is a behemoth. There are countless petabytes of data stored globally on SAP systems from SAP customers. So it is a very big source of information. And even in your organizations, you're likely to have 1, 2, 3, maybe many different instances of SAP running your business on a day-to-day basis. So if SAP is the Saudi Arabia of business data, we must also recognize that that data has not always been easy to access. There's very much a gate around SAP, and some of it is technical and some of it is knowledge-based. But it historically hasn't been easy to utilize that data in other applications such as Alteryx. So a few years ago, we started working with Alteryx, and the intention really was we really loved what Alteryx does. We love the way that the users of Alteryx are really quite evangelical about the product and what the capabilities of the product are, and we fully buy into that. But from our perspective and the kind of companies that we work with, the one thing that was missing was the easy access to data from SAP systems. So what we've done is combined these two elements. So Alteryx Designer, Alteryx Server, and then we have our product, the DVW Alteryx Connector for SAP, ACS for short, so we refer to it as ACS, for which we have an Alteryx Designer and also an Alteryx Server-based component as well. And what you'll see as we start doing some demonstration is that our ACS will work with all of your core SAP systems. So the majority of you on the call today will at least be running an SAP ECC system, which is the core enterprise resource planning system. It comes under different names. If you're running older versions, you may refer to it as SAP R3, you may refer to it as SAP ERP, and if you're a little bit ahead of the game, you may be utilizing SAP S/4HANA. This is essentially your core enterprise system through which all your financial transactions are processed, any stock movements are processed, sales orders, purchase orders, and so on and so forth. So our product and Alteryx work with all of those core SAP systems. In addition to the core, we'll also work with variants of the industry solutions. So if, again, I'm not sure who's on the call today, but if you work within the telco space or the utility space or oil and gas or retail and maybe utilizing one of those industry specific variants in your organization, then we can accommodate you and access data from those systems as well. And then moving away, if you like, the transactional systems SAP provides to the data warehousing that SAP provides, we also work with SAP BW, so good old SAP BW. We work with SAP BW on HANA and also SAP BW for HANA as well, and exploit the various capabilities of those solutions. We'll also work with business objects as well. So pretty much, if you're running it, we can access it as well. So key thing here then is we can access data from your SAP systems. We can do it in a very clean, easy fashion. And in so doing, we provide you with the ability to access a wide range of different types of objects within those underlying SAP systems. So in all SAP systems, we have data stored in tables. In most SAP systems, there'll be a variance of a data browser transaction, and that allows us to access table data directly. Yeah. Now we don't go in via literally via the table data, but database layer. We do everything via the application layer, and by doing that, we're able to respect the underlying authorizations that you as a user have, and make sure that the governance and limitations or safety belts within your various systems are fully respected. But we can access table data. We can also directly access and execute transaction codes, T codes as well, from within Alteryx using our tools, and we'll show a couple of examples of those later. So maybe if you have certain users who may be less familiar or less comfortable using tables or table names to pull data into Alteryx, then we can specify a T code, transaction code, and literally just execute that transaction within the system. And this row here down the bottom here relates to the various tools that we have that work with these different objects on the top row. We also have the ability to work with SAP queries. So queries aren't to be confused with SAP BW queries. SAP query relates to transactions such as SQVI, SQL1, and so on and so forth. And the SAP query was really around since the old days of R3, and may have even existed as early as R2, the very first SAP product was out there. And it's kind of a precursor to BW, but it sits within the core SAP system itself. So it exists within SAP ECC, ERP, S4HANA, R3, and so on. So we access data via queries. On the BW side, we can give you access to any of the BW queries or query views that you as a user are authorized to access. And we have a BW read tool that enables that. If you have a slightly deeper level of access within your SAP BW system, we can allow you to extract data directly from BW info providers as well. So as BW is fully covered. And then moving into sort of the later versions of SAP, so maybe BW for HANA, maybe S4 HANA. Then we have various HANA views. So we have CDS views, and we have calculation views, analytic views, these kind of views. And we have our tools as well that enable you to access data from those sources. And on the far right here, there may be some of you still who make use of business objects, and for that we have tools that allow us to access data from business objects universes or via business objects Webby reports as well. Okay. So quite a lot of capability there. Now I'll just flash up my screen to show you a couple of examples. So what we do is, in addition to providing software, we make available a large number of predefined workflows, sample workflows available to our customers and users, and these are available on the Alteryx gallery and can literally just be downloaded and utilized within Alteryx as long as you have our software installed. So these will cover a number of different use cases. We have one here, for example, this quite popular one that allows us to extract the attachments that are associated with, in this scenario here, a plant maintenance notification or a service order or service request from within the system.
Darren, it's Dennis. Sorry to interrupt. We do have a question.
Sure.
In my current BW, if my current BW only allows 500,000 of cells to be pulled at once, do you have an ability to work around and resolve this? And that's from Roz.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, Sky, I don't know, would you like to maybe address that particular point, because it's one that comes up from time to time?
Sure, absolutely. So yes, we a number of our customers have that limit, and there are actually solutions we have put in this tool. So that's just one safety belt, and there are a couple others. For example, timeout or the memory limit. For example, if you try and grab too much data, your dialog user has limited threshold of memory, and your SAP system will then kick your user out saying that, hey, you crossed that threshold. So in all these three cases, what you do is within our tool, as I will demo you, you will see that there are controls such as when you apply a variable, you can actually say, let's say you got 3 company codes worth of data to extract. You can say, get these 3 company codes, but 1 company code at a time. So we'll actually fire off a very thin request to the SAP system, and therefore that should actually keep you under the radar. And then on top of that, if you still need to apply further filters, you can apply another split, or let's say an additional drill down field or characteristic, or if you have any other variable that you can use to actually narrow down the bucket of data that comes out of the SAP system. But you will see more of that as I will do the demo. But the short answer is yes, absolutely. You can remain under the radar of that limit.
Thanks.
Thank you. And just another question from the chat. Are there any additional license requirements to connecting to SAP systems? So indeed, the connector that DVW is, the connectors are going to be showing today, these are do have additional costs associated with them. I imagine, Darren, you might be covering the different you'll be covering the different products as we go on today. So I'll defer to you on addressing that in more detail later on in today's presentation.
Sure, no problem. Thanks, Dennis. Yeah, we can certainly cover that, and we have a standard deck we can send out to anybody who's on the call today, so you can understand exactly what the products are and what the pricing associated with them is. Yeah, but it's not a free product. It does cost extra. Yeah, just before I hand over to Sky then, so just before the question started, saying that we have a number of, quite a large number of actually workflows, samples, accelerators available on Alteryx Gallery. They cover a whole number of different use cases, and they cover various function areas with SAP as well. So they range from the extraction of, in this case here, document attachments. They're associated with, in this case, plant maintenance or customer service documents. We have those that work with, let me just find this one here, that are used very widely to pull, say, financial accounting data directly from SAP systems. And this is a key one, the extract general ledger accounting data. A lot of our customers in finance and audit and tax utilize this one. We also have various ones that work, say, with the individual transaction codes as well. So here's a very simple example that will pull data from the material document list transaction, just as an example. So we have 40 odd workflows available to users, both trial and paid users on Alteryx Gallery, as long as you have our software installed on Alteryx. Okay, I think that hopefully gives you a flavour for what we're doing. I think what you really come here for is actually see the tool working. So perhaps we'll hand over to Sky.
Thanks, Darren. I still do not have the control to share my screen.
Sorry, Sky, I'm moving it down here. You're at the bottom of the list. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
Dennis, I'm going to move it to you. And
Okay, 1 sec.
all right, hold on 1 second. It's coming to Sky right now. There we go. Oh, shoot, you moved it. Yep, Sky, you're on.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so hello everyone, and I hope you can see my screen. If not, raise your hand. Okay, so what I'll do today is show you only the read tools that actually only extract data from the SAP system. So basically one way out. We also have capability, as Darren mentioned, to write data back into the SAP system, but that's not the scope of this demo. So I'll try and contain my excitement. I'm generally accused of explaining too much. So let's start with the SAP logon tool first. And this is where a user will come in and say, okay, this is my SAP system I want to connect to and get data from. So there is no limit in terms of how many systems you can list here. And I know a number of organizations generally have, some of the larger ones have very, very long lists. So you can actually add as many systems as you like. And they could be BW, HANA, SAP ECC, or anything in between. So I wanted to connect to SAP BW system first. Now in this case, I'm connecting via username and password, but you can also use single sign-on. That will work fine as well. So in this case, I have had my username and password previously saved, so they were read directly and displayed here. I will click on the ping servers button to confirm I can connect to the system. And at this stage, this tool then becomes the governor of your credentials within this single workflow. And as you can drop as many tools such as this one and can start to extract your data. So I will select a BW query here. So we can also, in fact, we extract data from info providers of all sorts. the new ones in the BW4 HANA system or the older legacy ones within the BW system. You can also connect to your BIX or BAX views. So if you have created a view using the Excel file on top of a query, you can actually access that as well. And obviously you can access your BW queries. So I'm going to look for a query which is a demo query and it's already in my history. If it is not, I can obviously do additional searches here by typing in a few characters. Once I have found my query, I'll select that query and work with it. I will then fire off a request to the SAP system and SAP system will give me the metadata back. Now in this case, you will see that even before it displayed me any of the selection criteria or the fields for output, it forced me to actually populate the mandatory variables. So as you can see here with the color coding, etc., it's asking that we supply the mandatory variables. Now I can either type in the values manually like this, and I can say, okay, get me anything which is greater than this value, or I can right click here and there are plenty of help options available along with a lot of explanation for each variable. So such as this is a mandatory variable and it only allows a single value, no range is available here. I'll right click here, bring up the help menu here, and I can right click again here and say, okay, let's add that to my low value. So we'll select that option and click OK. Now this is all good to go. At this stage, you can look at your selection screen here and you can say, okay, I'm either happy with the default selection. So this is how this BW query was designed, or I can actually take control and I can remove some of the fields from here. So as compared to other tools that SAP supplies, for example, whereas when you first run the query, you get your data out and then you run other deltas to actually shape the query. We give you a chance to have all your sort of preferences even before you hit the SAP system. So that's basically saving you a sort of bandwidth there and saving your SAP system from extra work. Right, at this stage, I'm quite happy with the shape of this query. I'll drag and drop a browse tool onto the canvas to the D output. D represents data, and the other two outputs there are for text, which is master data text dumps, and for the hierarchy data selection. So as you can see here, once the data comes out, it is all in flat and tabular format. It's absolutely clean. There is no work required for you to start cleaning hierarchies or totals or summarizations, and etc., etc. So there are characteristics, there are default texts available for some of the fields depending on the design of the query, and there are for this query 4 or 5 key figure columns as well. So this is the data now coming directly from the SAP system. At this stage, you can either obviously view it, and your target would be either to save this data as YXDB file, which is the default format of Alteryx as a local database, or you can select this output tool here and you can store this data in an SQL server or a data lake or anywhere you like, so you can persist this data. But effectively, this was a live connection into the SAP system. Now let me go back and show you a few more things around here. So this tool itself can be explained in a whole hour, so I'll try and do as much justice as I can. So you can see that there are basically, as you expand these nodes, there are a number of other options available here. So in this case, for partner region, we have the text, and within the text, I got short, medium, large text. For partner country, I got text. I also got attributes, and if you start to open those attributes, you got more options within there. So it just goes and goes and goes. And then same thing applies here. I got hierarchies as well. So let's imagine that you want to dump some master data. So ideally, so one of the questions there was how you overcome the challenge of basically not putting too much load on your SAP system, and I'll address that separately as well. So the idea is that as your data volume starts to grow, you would like to make sure that you are asking your SAP system just enough information so that it does not overload or does not run out of memory or other thresholds that we spoke about earlier. So in this case, for example, you only get the keys from here via the data output. So for example, let's imagine that you are working with a column called product. So in this run, we brought out the product as well as the product text. And if you want to avoid that, only bring out the product from the query because you have large data volume. Then you can bring out the text separately from this text output because that will be a very, very quick query to the database. And then you can do a join. So that's why this text output is important. And again, it will save you from asking too much data. So in this case, I will select this text node here, the parent node, and I can add a browse tool. to this output. And now the data come out from the T output based on my filter criteria. So we will only, again, not bring all the text for you. By default, we'll only bring those text values that are relevant for your data selected from here. So again, we will try and trim or reduce the data volume as much as possible, which is most relevant to the user. So in this case, we got the info object name, the internal format or the key of the info object, and then we got short, medium, and or large text. Now, if you want, you can actually do a join between this output and this output based on one of these columns, depending on the format. In this case, it's a very, very simple format. Sometimes we'll have the complex format and you would know which column here makes most sense to do a join. Right, so that's the text output. Now, before I actually go and show you how to split, etc., let me just quickly cover the hierarchies as well. So imagine that you want to get hierarchical data from your query. You will say, okay, my product has got multiple hierarchies here. I will select a few of them, and then I would like to do a join between this simplified data output and the hierarchy output so that I can actually do some further analysis of my data. Drag a browser.
Sky?
Yes?
Just another question that's come in, really interactive group today. We are bringing data in from multiple systems. Some of these fields share the same description, but they represent different data. So how do we create alias for these fields so that the end users using ad hoc understands what to expect in their output?
Sure. So you can always, so for example, if you click on, let's say, this line here, so this is what we are bringing out from the SAP system. So basically you got your technical name as well as your description. But if you do want to take control and change that, you drag this select tool from Alteryx and you say this cal day is my, let's say, I want to give it a really descriptive, funny example, descriptive cal day or anything you like. So basically now if you will run the workflow, you will actually see this renamed value in your output. I hope that answers your question. Okay, right, so let's just quickly between this output and the data output. Sorry, I'm working from home, so the network latency here is killing me. Apologies for the delays in there. Right, so let's have a look at this output first. So we selected an info object, which is Z product, and we selected two hierarchy IDs. As you can see, there are two different hierarchy IDs and two different hierarchy names, therefore, and then we got some levels in there. But if we pay attention to this special column here called leaf node, so from the context, we know that we were working with product field. So therefore, the leaf column here, which is always a guaranteed column when you run the hierarchy out. Sorry, Daniel?
Sorry, Sky, is your screen being updated or is it just my computer that's creating problems?
From my side, it looks all right. Anybody else having issues?
Darren?
Yeah, I can't, it's not updating.
I wonder if you stop sharing Sky and just start sharing again.
No problem.
Dennis here. If there are any of the attendees who are experiencing access problems, feel free to just chat. That way we can verify if what side it's coming from. Thanks.
Okay, it's definitely giving me some issues now in resharing. That's quite strange. So as I click on, can somebody else become presenter for a second? Darren, perhaps you, and then I'll try and take control again. If it doesn't work, I will ask Daniel to share his screen and do the demo.
Don't seem to have access.
I just moved it back to Darren. So Darren, you could try to reshare your deck and.
Right, 1 second. No, it's frozen up.
Oh, so that's probably WebEx then.
Let's try again. Yeah, no, I'm not getting the share option.
The ball is still against my name, so I'm just wondering if that needs to be moved to Darren first. Dennis, perhaps you want to quickly try.
Yeah, hi. It would appear that the DVW team is no longer listed as panelists. Mark, do they have to come back in somehow?
Yeah, I would suggest that. Yeah, it looks like they've dropped. So if you can just very quickly drop off and come back in. And
Okay, let's try that.
sorry about this, folks. Yeah, I noticed that as well. Dennis.
Yeah, well, while we're waiting for the DVW team to come back, maybe just to review something that's really important when it comes to the value proposition for Alteryx. As most of you will know, we're data agnostic from the point of view of what data that we connect to, and we're also data agnostic from the point of view of where we're sending the data to. So, with partners like DVW, we work with we have connectors that are out of the box within Alteryx, but for highly specialized environments such as the SAP systems that have been spoken about today, we're working with highly qualified and highly skilled partners such as DVW who've been working with us for quite some time and who have built out these connectors and done various deployments at an enterprise scale for our customers, and really that adds a lot more value to the investment that you've made in SAP, and as well what you're able to gain in terms of speed to insight by leveraging Alteryx. So it's a point to call out while we're waiting for the DVW guys to come back on. Do we have any questions in the chat right now?
Not that I can see, Dennis.
Okay. This could be a good time if anybody has some questions to put them in the chat, and so when the DVW team is able to connect again, we will be able to run through those questions, or maybe there's some things that Mark and I might be able to field. Are there any questions? I think I see one.
The only question I see there is a comment around the screen being frozen. So WebEx is causing issues across the board. The other tidbit, very timely question around the select tool, and I love the demonstration on the fly. But I know that is again the power of Alteryx being able to simply drag that tool on and rename. I know from working with SAP through SAP projects, naming nomenclature on files is often or columns is often tricky. So easily changing those for the business to interpret is a quick value prop for sure. I don't know, Dennis, if you have their number and just want to give their. I don't seem to see them on the attendee list as logging back in.
Yeah, so I'm going to. Apologies for this, everybody. I'm really appreciative of the fact that that you're all holding on. We will get through this shortly, so please do hang on. And I'm going to reach out to DVW, and we will be able to show you some content. So we're going to take a couple of minutes, and we'll get back on. So please stand by and keep the questions coming. If we can't answer them, we will be able to answer them shortly. I'll be right back. Everybody, we're close to finding a solution for the DVW team to join. Thank you very much for your patience. Please stand by.
All right, I think we've got Sky back on here. I'm just gonna.
All right, fantastic. So I managed to actually restart and join it somehow. I think they have issue Europe-wide probably. Okay, let me just quickly ask Darren and Daniil to do the same as well. Just one moment, please. Okay, and I'm nearly there. Starting my Alteryx now. Thanks very much for your patience. It's been minutes. Okay, and share my screen. Let's try that now.
Perfect. It's coming through now. There we go. It's like we didn't skip a beat.
Right, okay, so let's run it again, and I'll talk about the hierarchy tool for a quick second before we move on to other tools. Okay, so as I was saying, in this case, because we were working with the product field, therefore the leaf column here contains the product keys. However, you can look at any of these values and you can actually have the full parent-child relationship all the way up to the top level. So if you start from, let's say, the bottom up, so this level, level 5, contained the actual service machine value, but that had a parent in level 3, which had a parent here, which had no technical name. And then that had a parent called dump bucket, and eventually the assignment of this node was actually against the root node called EPCS level 1. So if you imagine the hierarchy tree, the Christmas tree, and you actually go through different branches, etc., we have actually completely flattened that and put that into a table format, so it becomes very, very useful, and a lot of our customers heavily depend on it. So you can now actually create a join between this column here, which represents product in this case, with the product key coming directly from here. So that then gives you a three-way join between hierarchies, the text, and the actual data coming from the SAP system. And now let's quickly jump on to your question earlier about how do you keep maximum key figure sales limit in check. So whereas I am firing a single request here for year 2012 for all the sales transaction types, I could do following. I could say, hey, yes, I want data, but rather than firing off a single request, can you please do me a favor and fire off multiple requests? So I'll say add to list, and this little checkbox magical button here, click OK. And now we will actually fire one request for this line and for fiscal year 2012, and that will then reduce the size of volume. So imagine there are 1 million records for this combination here, the entire combination, but then for this line, you can just imagine that if the data is equally distributed in an ideal world, then that will reduce that volume. Now, if that does not help, on top of that, this is a very good example of a query where a user does not have any other handle. You can go back to your selection tab and you can say, hey, I want to fire a request only for a limited reasons, and I will say this is my drill down filter. Click on here and select a few more values. Now let's say only these 3 values here, and select in list again, and we also want to apply a split line here. So first, the database will receive a request for this transaction type and fiscal year. Now, whatever the data comes out in the SAP application layer, at that stage, will actually just dust off anything which is not equal to an O region, northern region. Then the next request will go for the same combination of transaction type and fiscal year, and then will dust off everything which is not this partner region. So as you can see, you got plenty of control here to fire off as thin request as you like to make sure that you are actually getting smaller bunches of data. So that's basically your solution to the question that you were asking earlier. So this will overcome your challenge of maximum key figure cells limit, memory limit, as well as timeout issues. Okay, given the sort of limited time, I'll actually move on to other tools now. So let's just quickly talk about the table tool. If you want to access data from SAP ECC system, S/4HANA, or anything in between, including BW, if you are lucky enough you have access to tables, this tool is agnostic to what is the underlying ABAP stack. It will just literally hit the tables. So I'm now going to connect to a table called Mara. Hopefully most of the users, most of the attendees here can relate to that table. It contains material master data. So you simply search for your table, and let's hope the network doesn't die again. We'll get our table here and click OK. Right, at this stage we will fire off a request, get the metadata from that table, and give you a full transparency on those fields. As you will see here, the fields that appear under key fields and data fields are the same fields. There's no difference, except we have now identified that, okay, these are your primary keys on that table. The reason why we highlight them is to help the user understand the structure of the table so that they can apply correct filters on the table that will reduce the load on the database and make sure the data comes out very, very quickly. I'll select a few fields here. Obviously, I will switch on the key and text, etc. here. Now, these are the fields I want from this table, and all I have to do is just put a browse tool to the end of this tool to fire a request and get the data out. So this is how you would typically go into SAP system in a table browser transaction such as SE16 or an equivalent of that, and you'll sample a few hundred or few thousand records, and it will look in this format. Now this is where the journey just has begun. So we have a lot of things here that you can do to actually make sure you get large volume of data without actually impacting the SAP system. First of all, we have given you the primary key. Second thing is that you also have the full transparency of the secondary indexes. So if you apply filters on these, again, you will speed up the data extraction. And then the other thing is, if once you are done with your experiments, you will put in 0 there. That means you want to extract all the data from this table based on your filter criteria. And then let's imagine that in this table, we have for your filter criteria a million records sitting. Then this packet size will kick in. So for our example of a million records, we will go 20 times in this system and extract all that data in sequence. So basically one request after another will keep on firing multiple requests. So from your perspective, it's just a simple single workflow. But from SAP systems perspective and from connectors perspective, there are multiple requests that will be going back and forth, and we will finally give you a single output, so you don't have to lift a finger to connect out to put that data together. Now, in terms of applying filters, etc., it's a simple principle. You right click here and you either bring up the help pop-up menu to apply that filter, or you can simply say add blank filter line, and that will add a line here, and you can type in the value manually. It's your choice. Okay, so there we go. That's the table tool. Again, I just gave you a very, very quick overview. I'll bring up a couple of workflows that we actually already pre-packaged, and we'll show a couple of other things in there as well. Now we have one more handy tool for the SAP ECC system, or where you have the transaction codes or reports, and that's quite important. Let's simplify, let's also give you a demo of that. Right, so this is a tool where you will either typically type in a transaction code directly. So let's say I am working with MB51. This is again a material master transaction to get you some information out of the SAP system. So you'll select your transaction code, and then you will say, okay, this is the program that sits behind that transaction code.
select it, and then it will go and fetch the metadata. So this is now the same information that you typically see when you are in a blue SAP screen and you type in a transaction code. Obviously, it doesn't look very glamorous as it does in SAP because they have the nice screens and etc. But you have all the fields that you will typically see there. Now you have got multiple choices to apply these filters. Either you can just start to type them manually here, as we've been typing for other tools, or you say, hey, I want to work with this variant, and you don't have to do any of this. Then you will simply have this variant created directly in the SAP system, which can capture a lot of business logic, and then you simply click on the preview button. The reason we do the preview button here is because we don't know the structure of your output, and every report or T code differs in output. So all we want from you to know, how do you want us to help you clean your data? So you will say, this is my header record, and I'll say, I want to add this as a header line. So this header line is added here. If you also wanted to clean it further, we have the options that you can right click here. You can actually have an extra column inserted into the mix. You can ignore certain records and so on and so forth. And now if I click on the preview again, you will see that this data is now cleaned. You have the entire field list from that sample. You can increase the field sizes and so on and so forth. And then you will simply drag and drop a browse tool to the end of this tool, and you will run the workflow. So that is your tool to get the data from T codes and ABAP reports. Now, there are a couple of workflows that I wanted to open that will help us explain these tools in sort of more glory, and also give you context of if some people are actually willing to connect to S4HANA or BW4HANA system. So if you have CDS views, calculation views, etc., there are multiple routes for us to reach to those. So for example, if you have a CDS view with prompts, then we have the BW read tool, which can extract that data. So you will simply say, this is my CDS view, come in here in this tool, and just like we did the earlier presentation for the BW query tool, you will simply select your CDS view, apply any filters that you want to, and select your characteristics and your key figures. In this case, I have selected a lot of characteristics and only one key figure or two key figures, company code and GL account. You can apply your variables as you like and filters as we discussed earlier, and then you simply run it to get the data out. So this is your CDS view. Now, there are two sort of segregations, basically two types of CDS views. One with prompts, where you have to apply filters, as you can see here. One without prompts, where the CDS view is very, very simple, join between multiple tables. Now, if you have the prompts, then the BW read tool will fit in nicely. And if you do have a CDS view without prompts, then either this tool or the table tool can work as well. I see there are a couple of questions, Dennis. I'm not sure if you want me to take them now or later.
As you want. I was going to hold off to the point that you're ready. If you'd like to go ahead.
All right, let's just wait for 5 more minutes and we'll address them all towards the end. It just gives me a sort of nice, okay, 5-minute window. Right, and then here is another example. I'll just quickly open it, probably wouldn't run it, is the calculation view. So now I know that most of the focus from SAP is to actually kill the attribute views and so on and so forth, and actually only have the calculation views. That gives you a chance to create your traditional InfoCube style views. So if you are interested in that, again, this tool will do that nicely for you. You simply type in your calculation view here from the SAP HANA system, and you select the fields you want to see in your output. So in this case, it's a really simple report with a couple of characteristics and basically just a counter of those rows, and you can actually access that via the BW read tool. So that's another example. Now let me pull one more example, which will give you a hint what can you do in terms of making the workflows dynamic. So in this case, my first table here, which we went through earlier, is the Mara table, and I have applied some filters here. So I'm saying this field here, which is your industry sector, I want to apply a filter of type M and Z, and then, well, maybe these two can be actually displayed here as well, just to give you a bit of context. And then there are a couple of material numbers that I want to select. So for example, we want mechanical engineering and commodity management. So this is how a user basically will make their decision. And then they might have a list of material numbers directly applied here or a couple of other filters. Now, whatever data comes out of here, I want to use that to apply as filter criteria into my report tool so that it all becomes dynamic. So your filter criteria here will change your output, and therefore that will change the input into this tool, and therefore the final output will be different. So in this case, same MB51 transaction. This time I'm not looking for a variant. I want to apply these filters directly. So in this case, the material number field, this field here, is actually coming from my first table. And this is our ACS filter tool, which is a special tool to help bridge between multiple tools. So it actually takes the output of first tool and it formats it in a way that becomes acceptable by the other tool. So if I click here quickly, and I'll show you that on this dynamic input, these are the fields that we are expecting from you, and these sort of fields can differ. So this tool actually bridges that gap nicely. Now if I run this workflow based on my selection criteria of the first table tool, we'll feed in the data into the report tool, and then we'll get our data out. So that's the table tool and the report tool. Now this functionality of putting the dynamic input from one tool to another tool exists across the board for all our tools. So you can actually bring your filter criteria nicely from either a formula tool in Alteryx, so you can say, I want to get data for yesterday. Now your yesterday, sorry, I think in this case, the system is down, but ignore that, you got the idea. So you can have, for example, a requirement, you want to calculate, let's say, yesterday's date using the Alteryx's standard formula tool, and that will give you yesterday's data or a date, and then you can feed that into one of our tools to get data for yesterday. Now, every day, when the date changes, the formula tool will create a new date and so on and so forth, and you will get your data out. So basically, there's a lot of flexibility in there as well. Okay, now the one other last workflow that I wanted to open will give you an idea that you can actually also get data from business objects world. So if you have the need to connect to that system, we can connect to a business object server via the RESTful APIs. So as you can see here, this is my URL into that, or portal into that system there, and then this business objects universe tool will allow you to actually search for universes. So if I click here, I can see these are the universes either in list view or tree view, and as you select that, then from that point onwards the journey is consistent across all the tools. You make your selection including your characteristics, your measures, and so on and so forth, and if you want to apply any filters you can do so. And in this case, again, I want to get data for 3 years, but I want to fire off 1 calendar year at a time. So basically that's your split applied, and that will give you the data via universes. And lastly, we have the Webby. So in this case, principle remains same. You search for your Webby. Now Webbies, however, work on the basis of queries. So against Webby you will find a query, you select your query. Again, that will get you the metadata, which is no different than any other tool that we have seen so far. And Webby generally have their own filter criteria. You can't additionally do any filtering here. This is what the business object server will give you. And then you can actually just fire off a request to get the data from universes and Webbies. So at this stage, I will say I will stop. We have a few more tools, but you can go through our website to know more, and I'll give you a chance to ask more questions. Dennis, over to you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Okay, so there are a couple of questions in the chat, which I'll run through. Question: what's the minimum system memory requirement to avoid the not responding issue?
Okay, so on your end, I would say Alteryx and DVW both recommend minimum 8. If you can have 16, that will be fantastic, because when the data comes from SAP and if it is large volume, then your machine will become a bottleneck and it will start to read and write of the physical disk. So to avoid those issues, minimum 8. We generally recommend if you can have 16, even better.
Okay, great, perfect, thank you. A question about write back, and I can't recall if you covered this. Is it possible for data to be written back to SAP?
Yes, you can write either directly to the physical info cubes or DSOs, which are write optimized using this BW write tool. We also have a tool to write data back into SAP system using the iDoc tool. So basically we have, and this requires a large demo, you can actually clean your data by extracting from different sources, shape it, and then using the iDocs, you can push data back into your SAP or S4 HANA system.
Yeah, I think sorry guys, this guy said this would take probably an hour just to cover it in itself. So if there's interest, we'd be happy to run a session just on right back.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Darren. Another question with regards to aliases. What if you don't have Alteryx, but you have Webby? Would things work the same?
Yes.
Good. I'm just going through the chat to see if there's some others. Let me just see. Okay. You mentioned that ACS could connect directly to T codes. Does it apply only to standard SAP T codes or custom ones as well?
Anything. Yeah.
Okay,
Standard
perfect.
as well as custom. Yeah.
Okay. Another question here. It's very first with the comments, a very useful tool I see to access data from SAP systems. Two questions. First one, do we have capabilities to simulate SAP processes via UI, for example, adding a new product or updating various information on a product? Second question, how is it different from SAP Business Objects, reports, dashboards, etc.? Which are SAP's tools to access data?
Daniel, do you want to take both of those? I think first one refers to scripting, I believe. Daniel?
Yeah. So
Would you like me to repeat? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So in terms of the first one, so no, we've rejected scripting because it is not efficient, and there's a whole bunch of technical barriers. You can't run it on an Alteryx server. So what we've done for that specifically is we've developed the iDoc tool, and the iDoc tool can update your material masters. As Darren said, that's an hour plus kind of discussion, demonstration, etc. Okay. In terms of the second one, so if you want to go and extract your data using Webbies or other tools, yes, absolutely, you can extract it. You can then download it into CSV files, and then you can upload it from the CSV files into Alteryx. There's nothing preventing you from this. What this tool does is it provides a direct bridge directly from SAP into Alteryx. So you can then seamlessly run these workflows. You don't have to go through all the manual steps of getting the data out block by block, then manipulating it in Excel or whatever, and then bringing it into Alteryx. Okay, so fundamentally, these tools are there to provide a bridge between SAP and Alteryx, and then in Alteryx you can do all your data blending before you push it out into other tools. Yeah.
Good. Thank you very much. Another question just came in. Is there something that needs to be done on the SAP side by IT before being able to use the connectors?
So no, for the default, the core tools that you saw here today, you don't need to. For the SAP report tool, there's an API that we supply, which is free of cost to all our paid customers, that you can actually put into your SAP system, which is, by the way, a copy of standard SAP code, but with a lot of improvisation and reduced restrictions. So that's the only limitation. Now, this is your choice. If you have to use this tool only, then you need to import that. But otherwise, to start with, no, there's no need for IT to be involved.
Yeah, so even your standard authorizations should work. Okay, so you should really just be able to start using this on your system if you have the right authorizations in your SAP system. But again, if you need us to engage with your IT organization, we'd be more than willing to do it. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, that's certainly something that could be taken as a next step in the form of a discovery call to get into those details further. And I might add, I have noted everyone who's asked questions. I will make sure that you'll be able to follow up with your account executive at Alteryx, who can take that forward as appropriate. We're 1 minute over, but we did have a little bit of a lapse. I want to make sure that everybody gets their questions in. Maybe give it another minute or so for questions, and if we can't get to them, we'll certainly follow up. Does anybody in the chat have anything else they'd like to ask? Okay, I do have a question here. Just 1 second. I'm just going to bring it up. Bear with me for 1 sec. Okay.
So it's the SAP licensing. Yeah.
Yeah, the SAP Lite. Do you see that? Just came in from Orliano.
Sure. So I think, Darren, a question for you then is
Yeah.
basically what is the SAP licensing need for this connector to be used?
So generally, also blanket statement, our tools don't circumvent or attempt to circumvent SAP licensing at all. In each of the demonstrations Sky delivered there, we are connecting to an SAP system or business object system using a named user with their associated password, so named user access. Generally, that's how our customers access SAP systems through Alteryx, and this is not an issue. The indirect access becomes a topic is when you're trying to circumvent, where maybe we're using a complete generic user from Alteryx to extract data from SAP where we don't have the appropriate level of licensing. So our guide here is always refer back to your license agreement with SAP. We don't know individually what your companies have. From experience, we have many hundreds of customers happily using this now in very large numbers of users. Is the named user and password is not an issue. If you want to use a sort of a system or service type of user, you just need to validate that your license is appropriate for what you're trying to do within the system.
Thank you very much for that that response. And forgive me, this has come true in the past, but do we need to install anything in our SAP system to make this connector work?
The answer is no. As Sky mentioned, the majority of our tools that form part of the ACS require no installation on SAP at all. There are, however, a small number of our tools that, if you'd like to use them, does require. So the SAP report tool, which was used to pull data from T-codes, that does require some work to be done within the SAP environment. Basically, we provide the code, you can review it, you can install it. Broadly, the red colored tools may require installation. Anything that is not red requires no installation at all. So table tool, no installation. BW read tool, no installation. Query tool, no installation, so on and so forth. So it's basically the report tool of the tools we showed you today would require some installation.
Okay, very good. And I think this is a bit of a repeat. Do I need separate licenses to connect to different SAP systems? And it sounds like that's been covered. Just having a last look here. Okay, it would appear that we don't have any other questions, and we are 5 minutes past the hour. So I wanted to thank everybody today for joining us and staying on. You were absolutely a very interactive group, and I thought it was very well done. Thank you very much to the DVW team for making the time today to walk everybody through the value of the connector. I'll send out an edit of the recording to everyone who registered and who's here for future reference, and we'll make sure that we have everybody connected accordingly with their account executives for next steps. So with that, again, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will be in touch soon.
Great.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.